Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about tabletop role-playing games and power levels in categories, okay? So, what I'm talking about today is something that I've been wanting, something that's I'm working on, and I kind of want to get to a particular place with tabletop role-playing games. So, tabletop role-playing games are a number one hobby. I absolutely love them. They're just a world of joy to me, right? So one of the things that, when you really love something, one of the things you have to do is you have to learn how to moderate it, right? So one of the things that I've been doing is I've been learning how to moderate my tabletop role-playing games, right? So one, I want to enjoy the hobby. I want to be knowledgeable about the tabletop role-playing games that are out there. But I'm a father and a husband, and so I want to be respectful to my wife and my kids in what I purchase, right? So I want to get the cool new tabletop role-playing games that are out there, but I also want to be respectful and not, spend a ton of money, a ton of resources for my family, right? So what this does is it requires me to categorize tabletop role-playing games. So some of the things I've started to do to be a good hobbyer, a dedicated in the weeds type tabletop role player, but at the same time be respectful to my family, is source books. I've gotten rid of source books altogether, right? And the reason why is source books are great. They're a lot of fun for people who are super into one role-playing game. But if you're into tabletop role-playing games as a hobby, they're terrible, right? And actually, in my opinion, source books are problematic for a lot of reasons. I understand why some people buy them, but one of the things that's really helped me is I just buy core rule books now, period. That's all I buy, right? And there's a whole lot of reasons for that. So with this new change in the hobby, I want to know what new core rule books are coming out. Now, a core rule book is the base book of the game. Once you have this, you can play this tabletop role-playing game. It's also almost always the first book that comes out for a tabletop role-playing game. So for me, what I would like to do, what I really would like, and the entire point of this video, right, is that I already have this in the comic book world, right? So in the comic book world, on Mondays and Tuesdays, actually on Tuesdays, multiple sites say, here are the comic books, the brand new comic books that you will get tomorrow in your comic book, in the comic book shop. They have a listing of every Marvel comic book, every DC comic book, and every indie comic book that will be distributed to the comic book shops in America. This does not exist for tabletop role-playing games. And I totally get why. We're way too niche, right? We're much smaller. We're a smaller community than comic books are, right? And also, we don't have a billion-dollar movie. We don't have multiple billion-dollar movie franchises that are kind of bolted onto our hobby. Not yet. We're hoping that the Dungeons and Dragons movie will be fantastic, and maybe that'll get some juice, right? But what I would like to do is, and I've been thinking about, becoming this person who says, these are the new role-playing games that have come out this month, right? And I don't want to do this job, but I want this to exist. And, just because I'm busy, right? I would love to do it, if I had all the time in the world, I would just spend my time doing this. But, like I said, I'm a husband and father. I got a lot of stuff to do. But I'm thinking, I'm already trying to figure out what are the new tabletop role-playing games that came out this month. I want to know, right? Well, if I figure that out, I'm going to start publishing it because it's not easy to know, right? And right now, there is nowhere where you will find a list of all the tabletop role-playing games that came out this month, right? And there's a few reasons for that, okay? So one, there are real tabletop role-playing game companies, right? Fantasy Flight Games, they make tabletop role-playing games. Wizards of the Coast, they make tabletop role-playing games. Evil Hat, they make tabletop role-playing games. Monty Cook Games, they make tabletop role-playing games. Who makes, Green Ronin Publishing, they make tabletop role-playing games. Kobold Press, right? They make tabletop role-playing games. That might be the full list, right? And when I say companies, I mean they have a building, people go to work there every day, multiple people, not just one guy, working out of his apartment or, this is an actual business, right? And there aren't that many, right? Now, after that, it gets weird, right? So one, there are a lot of small tabletop role-playing game companies, right? And these are one-man bands, right? Or, well, I was going to say there's a one-woman band, but I don't know any one-woman bands who are making tabletop role-playing games. Emily Care Boss, she wrote Bubblegum Shoe, right? And, there's a few others out there. Game designers who are women who are making their own tabletop role-playing games are pretty rare, right? If I'm wrong on this, please correct me. I would love to know some women tabletop role-playing gamer out there that are running their own tabletop role-playing game companies. I've been around the block. I don't know any, right? So hopefully we're going to get that. Okay, so continuing forward. So I would really like to see, so the reality is I would like this list. I want to know what are the new games that are coming out there. Oh, and so you have the real companies. Then you have these one-man bands, right? One guy who's got an idea. He's been working on it forever. He plays tested with his friends. And then he got his cousin to do the art, right? There are literally dozens of these, right? And so now that doesn't mean that their games are bad. It does mean that their games are different, right? And some of them are bad. But to tell the truth, there are bad tabletop role-playing games created by the real companies I named at the start. The odds of them being better are better. The odds of them being high quality are better, but it's not always a lock, right? So the other thing is Kickstarter, right? So there are a lot of Kickstarters, companies that are creating tabletop role-playing games on Kickstarter. By the way, so really, literally, a good way to do this is go to Noble Knight Games and just go to role-playing games. There are hundreds of tabletop role-playing game companies, and there is well over 1,000 tabletop role-playing games. And I'm not talking tabletop role-playing game books. There are over 10,000, easily 10,000 role-playing game books. I'm just talking tabletop role-playing games, game systems, right? Or games, right? There's just tons. There's so many, right? Now, the reason there are so many of these, right, is because it is super fun to create a tabletop role-playing game. It's wonderful. Like, you get to create your own world. You get to create your own rule system. One of the biggest things you're doing, and, you don't want to do this, but I think a lot of guys do. You're saying, oh, these guys made this tabletop role-playing game that I read and I played, and they did this wrong, right? So a lot of times you're fixing what you didn't like in other games, right? So all this is in the mix, right? So what I want to do is I want to put tabletop role-playing games into categories. Now, I want to be clear. I love tabletop role-playing games. I know as soon as you say I'm going to put a label on something, that upsets people, right? Now, the reason I don't want to label these because I want to be dismissive of them. I want to label them because I need to get a task done, right? And that task is I want to read the top tier, middle tier, and I do not want to read the bottom tier tabletop role-playing games because I just do not have time, right? But I would really like to make sure that I am reading every top tier tabletop role-playing game, every middle tier tabletop role-playing game, and every low tier tabletop role-playing game. Now, recently, I'm creating my own tabletop role-playing game. It's called Solnar Swift Arc. You can see videos on it here on YouTube. You can also read about it on nerdarchy.com. Right now, I'm a one-man band. Right, so rather than say low, high, and low, middle, and high tier, I'm going to call the categories I would like to apply to tabletop role-playing games are Grunt, Veteran, and Elite. Right now, I worked this out. These are categories that I use in Solnar Swift Arc to measure non-player characters. So one of the reasons I use these specific terms was, one, at first I started with minion, henchman, villain. So those categories are very clear, right? Minion is a low-level, person. A henchman is someone who's competent and dangerous. A villain is someone who you are in the room with them and you always know that you need to be wary because you could die, right? You can tell the power levels with those words right away, right? That's what I want to apply to these tabletop role-playing games. So the terms I've come up with, veteran, elite, and the low category. Oh man, why am I forgetting the low category? So there are three. Man, I am so drawing a blank here. I apologize. I just said it. So anyway, these three tier levels. Grunt Veteran Elite, right? So in order to get there, to explain the levels of these tabletop role-playing games, the way I want to slot them, I was just thinking about it, and I don't know why this came into my head, but what did come into my head is pop stars, right? So I'm a big movie. I am a music fan. I don't want to say I'm a big music fan because I know there's some very serious music fans out there who would say I am not a big music fan. I am a music fan. So so I like pop music as well. I like lots of kinds of music, but I do enjoy pop music. So I think so you have Grunt, Veteran, and Elite. An elite level, a top level pop star is Taylor Swift, okay, right now. A veteran level pop star is Carly Rae Jepsen, right? And a grunt level pop star is Teresa Stremski, right? You haven't heard of, okay. So I'll just explain these, right? So Taylor Swift sells out stadiums. Carly Rae Jepsen, she can come into any town in America and she's going to be in the city at a small theater, right? You know, she's probably not going to sell out a stadium, but she can go to a place that seats 1,000. She can show up and she can sell out a theater, right? And then Teresa Stremski, you don't know her, right? She's done 2 albums. All of her songs are on YouTube, and she plays at the mall, right? And when she plays at her mall, her aunt has a card table, and they sell her CDs at that card table. She's a grunt, right? Okay, so those are the levels, right? So you have Taylor Swift, Carly Rae Jepsen, Teresa Stremski, right? So that's what I want to be able to do, is I want to be able to, and also, when you think about those 3, there's a power level that comes with them, right? So a perfect example is in Pennsylvania, where I live, right, where the places where these people would play, right, is Taylor Swift would play the Link, which is a brand new stadium where the Philadelphia Eagles play, right? That's where Taylor Swift would come if she came to Philadelphia. Carly Rae Jepsen would play at the Tower. The Tower is a highly respected old theater where like the Rolling Stones played in the 60s. It seats 1,000. It's an old theater, but it's classy, right? And real artists play there, right? And lots of artists have played there. And Elvis Costello has played there, and lots of different people, right? And then Teresa Stremski, she plays at the King of Prussia Mall, right? That's how you understand it, right? Now, from a power level, what I wanted to explain is just what these people can do, right? So one, I just explained what kind of venues they can sell out, right? Or they can actually book and perform at. The next level would be like, let's say that we have lots of high schools around here. We have public high schools around here. So let's say that one of our public high schools won, the state football championship, and these artists, wanted to honor this school for one reason or another, maybe just as a publicity stunt or whatever, and they call the school and they say, so here's how those conversations would go. So Taylor Swift's agent calls the school, let's say, Sun Valley. It's an actual high school here. And she says, hey, this is Taylor Swift, or let's say she calls and she says, can I speak to the principal? This is Taylor Swift. I would really love to play a concert to honor your team for winning, the state championship. Principal gets really excited and says, that's great, okay? That's awesome. He's going to call some alumni, and it's going to be so packed that they're going to have to choose which of the students go into that small gym where they're going to hold it, right? And it's going to be a big deal, and every single seat will be carefully thought about who's going to sit there, and it is an honor for them to receive, this person and have this person perform for them, right? Big deal, right? Carly Rae Jepsen calls up, and the principal's like, oh, well, that would be nice, that'd be great, super, yeah, come on in, we'll make time for you, right? Teresa Stremski calls, and he's like, well, who are you again? Well, we got a lot going on now. We have a talent show coming on next week, or what, So, like, when that call comes, that's what I mean by power level. And the reason I'm getting into all this different mechanics is, I'm kind of like saying, one of the reasons why I'm talking about it as in-depth as I am, is the reality is, I'm not talking about quality, right? Because I feel that quality is a different issue. I'm talking the juice these tabletop role-playing games bring when they're released, right? The power they have, right? How many people play them? What is the overall community's thoughts on this game? Do they have any reach into the mainstream, right? You know, this kind of thing. And so that's one of the reasons why I've been talking about Pop Stars is it's just, there are different levels, right? And there are different levels in tabletop role-playing games. So I'm going to give 3 examples of where tabletop role-playing games are right now, right? And I want to make it super clear. This is not a quality issue. This is a reach issue. This is a power issue. This is a juice issue, right? It's just a category that these go into, and so here it goes. Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is an elite, right? It is 100% full color on every page. It is, you know, they can easily charge $50 or $60 for that book, and they sell out at shops, right? In addition to that, if you say Dungeons & Dragons, people in the mainstream will actually know what you're talking about, right? So if you invite somebody who's never played a tabletop role-playing game to play Dungeons & Dragons, they're going to know, and you say, hey, I'm playing Dungeons & Dragons this weekend, they're going to have a concept of what you're talking about, right? There might be some confusion, but there's a good chance they'll understand. Oh, you mean we're going to sit in your basement and play with miniatures? Or they might not even know miniatures, toys, whatever, like, right? So let's talk. So Dungeons & Dragons is an elite, right? A veteran, Fate core, made by Evil Hat. This is a great game. You can find this game on the shelf at some hobby shops, right? And then so Fate core is a veteran, right? By the way, Fate core is a black and white rulebook. And then the last one is a Grunt, and a good example of a Grunt is Breach World. You haven't heard of Breach World? It's a real game. It's a good game, right? It is a clone of Rifts in many ways, and it's a one-man band, right? And it's relative, you know. And so Breach World is a Grunt, right? Now I think Breach World's a really cool game. It's on my list. You know, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, you know, should I get this, right? But it's a Grunt, right? And so, so right now I'm working to put these tabletop role-playing games into categories so that I can start every month knowing at minimum, these are the Grunts I'm going to ignore. These are the veterans I'm going to put on my list to get or maybe not get. And I want to buy every elite tabletop role-playing game that comes out. And so that's why I'm thinking about these categories. Thank you. Take care.